Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week, I'm going to be talking through 10 money mindset tips to help grow a thriving jewelry business in 2024, which I think is a very apt topic for this time of year. We're kind of getting ready for our plans for the rest of the year, but also January can be a time of more things coming up about money, worries, fears, anxieties, and sometimes expectation and hope. So there's, a whole mixture of things. And the way that we think about money in our business, the way we relate to money, it's a relationship that we have with it, makes all the difference to what we're able to do and achieve in our businesses and in our lives in general. So this is a topic I'm very passionate about. And I actually did a talk about this a week or so ago at a women's networking event, and it was really lovely to kind of have some of these open discussions about money and about how we think about it and how we can have a better relationship with it. So I'm excited to share some of these ideas with you today. And just before we get into kind of the content of the episode, there's some very exciting news, which is that the Jewellery Business Academy is open for enrolment. It is open today. It is only open for 2 weeks, which is a very short time. We only open it twice a year. This is the second time. Well, we started kind of October time. This is the only other opening that we have. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Jewellery Business Academy is the main way that we help jewelers to grow their businesses at Jewelers Academy. It is a year-long program that you sign up to, and we have monthly masterclasses, training. You also have monthly group mentoring calls in lovely small groups to kind of help support each other to grow. And you also have one-to-one mentoring as well with a jewelry business mentor. So it's a great place to learn more about running a jewelry business, but also to get that regular accountability and kind of check-ins and mentoring and support, both one-to-one in groups and in the wider community through the Facebook groups and things like that. So definitely go and check it out if you are not a member already. And we also have a price increase for the Jewellery Business Academy because it is way too low at the moment. We're going to be talking about that in our money mindset, increasing your prices. But we have a price increase and it comes in after the first week. So you only have 1 week to get in kind of at the old rate, and then it is going up. So I'll put all the details in the show notes. Check it out. Come and join us. It's such a lovely group, and it's just wonderful to be working together with hundreds of other jewelers growing their businesses. And we very much believe in community over competition. So we're all there just cheering each other on, supporting each other. And it's also a great place to come and share about, the struggles that you're facing, but also the successes that are coming up too. So very excited that that is open again. And finally on that note, we are going to be running the Jewellery Business Bootcamp, which is our flagship 8-week intensive program to learn everything you need to know about starting and growing a successful, profitable, and sustainable jewelry business based around your values. So that is starting, it's part of the Jewellery Business Academy. So if you are in the Jewellery Business Academy, you are signed up to bootcamp. That is how you join the bootcamp program. And that starts in early February and runs for 8 weeks. So it's kind of like a really good time to come in because we're getting into some real meaty stuff there. So more about that in the links in the show notes. You can check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. But I do want to get into the content of today's episode because I have lots to talk to you about money. So I just have a few notes here, which I am just going to pull up and get started because it's such a meaty subject. I want to really, make sure that we explore a lot of it. So I guess to begin with, I was thinking, what is money mindset? What does that mean to us? What does that mean to you? And for me, like I mentioned, it's the relationship that we have with money. So money is like a form of energy. It's something that can be used for good. It's something that can be used for bad. And I heard someone say once that money makes you more of what you already are. So if you're already kind of struggling in a really bad place in life, we see people use money in destructive ways, in ways that are harmful to them and others. And sometimes we've been around that a lot and it can make us feel uncomfortable thinking or talking about money. But likewise, if you are, in a good place and that you're kind of positive and there's lots of good causes that you want to support and be involved in, money can be an incredible force for good. So for me, it's like a power, it's an energy that you can put into whatever sort of space you choose. And it's always a good thing, I think, to have a little bit too much. It's better than having a little bit too little. And I think, sometimes a lot of us feel uncomfortable as creatives and as makers thinking and talking about money too much, because I hear a lot of people say, like, I don't do it for the money. And of course, that's true. Like, none of us came into this area for money, because, it wouldn't make that much sense. We spend a lot of money learning about jewelry making, buying all the tools, so on and so forth. And I'll never forget when I first started making jewelry, that someone sort of said to me, "Oh, you can't do that as a job. There's no money in it." And I sort of, luckily, I'd been told that before about another career. I wanted to be a dancer, and someone said, "There's no money in that." So I was like, "Oh, okay, I can't do that then, because I need money to survive." And okay, and I started to realize it's interesting. These are people's ideas and opinions, but it's not necessarily true. And actually, whatever area you're passionate about, there's always a way to make money in it. So again, that's kind of starting to look at mindset and beliefs and what messages we were given. Something quite powerful, which I read about a few years ago, is this idea that our core beliefs around money are formed by the time we are 7 years old. So I want you guys to have a think about, what were the messages that you had growing up? What were the things that were said in your family, in your friendships? I mean, usually by 7, it's mostly family, sort of mum and dad, and perhaps brothers and sisters and things like that. And it's never about assigning blame to anyone or anything, but just having that self-awareness, that kind of knowledge really is power. If we know ourselves better, we can understand, oh, that's why I feel uncomfortable raising my prices, or that's why it feels difficult to say no to someone who's asking for a bargain. So some of this work, which I would encourage you to do around money mindset and kind of having a really good relationship with money, is looking back for a bit and saying, okay, what was said in my household? And I have some examples of the kind of things that might come up. So things like, we don't have enough money, we never have enough. It's too expensive. I want to buy this thing, mummy. No, it's too expensive. And these are not necessarily bad or good, but it's just awareness of what were the messages that were strong for us. We are a poor family. That can be quite a strong message if that's ingrained in you. I come from a poor family. That's something that sometimes doesn't leave, and that may be affecting the way that you relate to money as well. Money doesn't grow on trees. That's always quite a fun one, but again, it's kind of a message of like, that there isn't abundance. This isn't something I can just get. It's not easy. If you want money, you have to work hard for it. That's quite I can kind of relate to that one quite a lot. Like, I very much got the message, like, you can have anything you want, but you have to work hard for it. And, none of these things are necessarily true. They're just beliefs. They're things that people have said, and we all have our own set of them, whether we're kind of aware of them or not. So it's a great exercise to kind of just reflect back and think what comes to mind, and maybe jot some down. What are the core? And you may have some really positive ones and also some perhaps negative ones. Another one which comes up a lot is people with money are greedy. And now this can be a resistance to wanting to make money, because you feel like perhaps you'll be judged for it. Is it greedy to charge more? Am I a bad person? Am I unkind if I'm, putting my prices up, things like that. And we can start to see, especially when we put it on paper, we can start to see how we are assigning ideas and values and thoughts and judgments to the way that people are, what they're doing with money in their business or in their lives in general. And again, this awareness is just so helpful, especially, I mean, it's helpful in life in general, and if you're raising children and the messages that we're sort of passing on to the next generation as well, or even sort of young children in your family, aunties, uncles, it all kind of has an impact. And I think we all have those moments in life where someone said something to us about money, and it's kind of hit us. And again, it can be in a good way, in a bad way. And I definitely have a mixture of both. I had a father who was very, like, made quite a lot of money, but was quite scared about not having enough. And so I saw this person who had quite a lot, but was always worried they didn't have enough, which I thought, oh, that's interesting because it looks like you have plenty to me. But for him, it didn't, there was that fear there. And my mum was always very much like, we'll always have enough. She didn't have as much, but she always believed like, we'll always have enough. Like, if we need something, we'll find it. And, very generous. So it was interesting for me seeing those two different narratives. And I think I've got a bit of both, but I also chose the one that I liked the most. I kind of went with that a bit more. So yeah, that's kind of my first tip, I suppose, is to reflect back on especially your childhood and the beliefs around money that were formed there. Try to do it, in a non-judgmental way and just looking at what was there, and really having compassion for yourself while you're doing that kind of work. It can, for some people, it can bring up a lot, and if you are doing some other internal work like going to therapy or mindfulness or any of those kind of things, you can use your tools and techniques that you use to kind of look after yourself around these ideas as well, because yeah, money can be a difficult topic to talk about. I remember someone saying in something that I read that it's easier to do a workshop on sex than it is on money, because people's beliefs around money can be really, they can really scare them. And I think money and fear can often go hand in hand. And another thing I asked people to do in the live workshop that I did, which is quite a good exercise, is just to almost free associate. When I say the word money, what's your immediate reaction? Without thinking, like, what's the word that comes next? I think that's always quite interesting. And I know for me, it can change. Sometimes I feel like being very loving around it and like, oh, it's a wonderful force that I can use to do wonderful things in the world and help people and connect with people and go on traveling and all these kind of things. And other times I can feel like, oh, I need to be careful around. Is it something I have to watch and be careful and kind of have more that fear base? So with an ideal money mindset, I suppose we want to move towards that kind of love space rather than the fear. And there's I've read a lot around these topics. There's another book I read and it talked a lot about, just life in general. And it was saying, in every situation, we can either choose an atmosphere of love or an atmosphere of fear in everything. So, if we're choosing a design, we can choose something that we love to make or we're scared to make it. So we'll go with something safer. And the idea behind it is that we move more towards this atmosphere of love and away from this atmosphere of fear when we're aware of it. And I think money is very associated with that. The choices that you're making in your business, are you making them out of love for yourself, for your customers, for the business that you're trying to create, for the family you're trying to support, for whatever you're creating? Or is it coming from fear? And, for most of us, it's a bit of both. But like I said, that self-awareness and just asking yourself when you're making these decisions, should I buy this? Should I invest in that? Should I, why are we doing it? And is it coming from the right space? And I find if it's coming from that love space, it's always a good intention. It's pretty much always the right thing to do. Even if I make a mistake and get it wrong and then learn and don't do it again, it's it's coming from the kind of the true part of ourselves, I suppose, that knows what we need to do. So that's the first bit on money mindset, is kind of looking at, okay, I've got these core beliefs that were formed quite early on, and we all have them, and they will have developed and evolved over time as well. But the great news is, if you have identified that some of them are quite challenging, that you can totally turn them around, and there's lots of things and kind of exercises that you can do once you've got the awareness to say, okay, I'm going to make some changes now. I don't need those anymore. When we think about the generations before us, a lot of them came from war, from famine. The rations were around. It wasn't that long ago. So it's no wonder a lot of these beliefs are formed. But nowadays we have a very different landscape. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but we're not, especially here in the UK, we're not in that situation. And so we do need to adapt and update some of our beliefs around these things so that we can kind of enjoy what we're doing and charge correctly and feel really good about that and feel confident in in what we're doing and enjoy the money that we do have and allow more kind of to come in. So a few ways that we can make adaptations. So the first one is affirmations and meditations. We actually have a free course on this, which I'd recommend you take if you're kind of resonating with some of this stuff and you feel like you're ready to do some of this work. So it's just called Affirmations for Jewelers. It's free. It's on the website. It's not just around money. It's around everything, but it's a similar process. So if you've identified like, okay, I do have some of these, core beliefs that I'd quite like to work on, then you can write down some affirmations to kind of target them. So you might say a core belief of mine is I don't have enough money. Like however much I have, I always feel like I don't have enough. And how the universe works, I believe, is that if we always believe that, it's always going to create that for us because that's what we expect. We almost kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we want to kind of move away from that. So what kind of affirmations can we do that feel appropriate to us to kind of move towards where we want to be? So it may be, that thing that my mum used to say, like, there's always enough. There's however much we have, it's always enough. If we need money for something, we can find it. So we start feeling a bit more positive about these things. And, it can seem superfluous to kind of just say the opposite, but if you do it regularly and you kind of reinforce it, and just remember all of these things are just ideas. So the idea that you had before is just an idea. It's not necessarily the truth, and the new one is just an idea. So we're kind of replacing them, and it's recommended that you do these a few times a day, ideally like in the morning when you first wake up, just before you go to bed. Your mind is in a better, more receptive state at those times when you're kind of in between sleep and awake. And if you can fit one in the daytime as well, to do 3 a day, then that can make a huge difference. And just doing these for 21 days, 30 days, long enough to kind of form a habit can make a big difference. So you're just sort of chipping away at some of these ideas and sort of challenging them and saying, well, actually, that is an old belief. That's a generational passed down belief that doesn't serve me anymore. But actually, yeah, I can, if I need money, I can find it. And I know a lot of us believe that there'll always be a way. And then you can always go further and say, money comes to me easily. You can choose what your beliefs are. You get to choose them. So whatever you want it to be, you can choose it and, start to challenge some of those ideas. So that's the first kind of action step, I suppose, but maybe that's number 2. I'm bad with these 10 tip things. There's going to be at least 10. There may be more. I may lose track of the numbers, but it's all going to happen. So the next one is about community. So when you are working on your money mindset and you've made a decision that you're going to kind of focus on doing some of this work, and it is work, it's not just natural. Like I said, doing the affirmations, that's a regular exercise. Writing down some of your challenging beliefs, that's an exercise. It is work. So we really want to spend time around people who are supportive of this kind of work. So if you have people in your friends and family group who you feel like if you talk to about this, they wouldn't get it, they would challenge you, they would try and, kind of pick it apart, maybe keep it away from them for now, because it is quite a fragile new thing when you're working on this stuff. And you don't need to convince anybody else that this is what they should do. But it is something that you can do and find other people who want to work on it as well. I mean, the Jewellery Academy Facebook group is a great place, especially if you're listening to the podcast. There'll be other people listening at the same time this week. So you can go in there and just say, does anyone want to connect around money mindset stuff and just be buddies and just talk to each other? Or you may have friends who are more inclined towards this way of thinking, who perhaps are more interested in self-development and, these kind of ideas. So I would just say, find people who support this, find other people who have this idea. And they often say, don't they, that we are like a mixture of the 7 people we hang out with the most. So if you are living with and surrounded by lots of people who have very challenging views around money, it's good to start being aware of that and thinking, oh, how can I find some friendships or some associates or, some contacts of people who do hold it quite lightly, who do feel good around this kind of topic, because it really helps to have other people kind of supporting you. An environment makes up loads of our success. You know, if we're not in the right environment, it can make it a lot more tricky. You can always do this work anyway, but it is great to be able to do it in community. And we are definitely here for that. So feel free to connect with anyone in our community around that too. So the next tip is education. So this is a whole area, and I'm just doing like an intro to it in this podcast today. And we do actually have a course in Jewellery Academy on money mindset where we go into a lot more detail around these topics and have a lot more exercises and things. I would definitely recommend checking that out. It is a brilliant course. It's filmed also with Anna Campbell and Jen, who is on our team at Jewellery Academy, and we all have kind of different experience that we bring and different exercises. So if you want to delve deeper into this stuff, that's going to be really brilliant. We're also going to be talking about it inside the Jewellery Business Academy throughout the year. We have a whole month on money and pricing and money mindset. So there's lots of spaces to be able to have this ongoing kind of growth journey around your relationship with your finances, with your money, which is so important when you're running a business, but especially if you're a woman running a business, and especially if you're a creative business. And if you're a woman running a creative business, then you're like the most vulnerable group in terms of undercharging. So we want to really make sure that you've got the support to be able to feel confident and courageous around, you know, doing the right thing for you and your business when it comes to money, investment, pricing, all those kind of things. So what I mean by education is, you know, learn about this stuff. Listen to podcasts like you're doing now, but there's loads of podcasts around money mindset. There's lots of books as well. There's, you know, when I was Googling this the other day, I think when I first started learning about it, there was like 1 or 2 books, you know, like a decade or more ago, potentially 2 decades ago. But now it's become a lot more popular, which is brilliant. It's become, you know, more in the public kind of conscious. So if you decide this is something you want to focus on, then definitely there's loads of material out there. And we're always kind of sewing bits into what we're doing as well. So you've got it here too. The next sort of tip or thing that I wanted to say is just really have compassion for yourself when you're doing work around money, because it's not just about money. It brings up a lot of thoughts around security or insecurity. It's one of like the basic needs. Some of our basic needs around housing, around food, around warmth are all very associated with money, especially, you know, these days. So you know, just really be kind to yourself. Don't think of it as something that isn't important. This is really important and can be quite deep work. And if you do need extra support with it, you know, obviously make sure that you kind of get yourself what you need and seek that. But yeah, and I think, you know, as well as compassion, this spirit of forgiveness. So a lot of money fears or worries are to do with kind of guilt, shame, blame. You know, if our businesses don't do well, some of our natural reactions are, I'm not good enough. I didn't do the right things. I haven't made any money this year. Maybe I feel shame about that. So starting to see where we're associating these sort of negative emotions to what's happening in our business. And the truth is, like, whether you make money or not, you're totally valuable and precious as a human being. It doesn't change anything. You know, whether you're a millionaire or you're homeless on the street, you are just as precious and valuable as a person. You know, making money is just a great thing that we get to do. It gives us wonderful things in the world, but it never is associated with our self-worth. And I think, you know, doing some work to detach the two, because it's very normal, especially in our society, to feel like, you know, if you have money, you're successful, you're a better person. If you lose it, you're a bad person. And, you know, I think when we put it in very crude words like that, we can start to see how dysfunctional that is. But we all have a little bit of that. I mean, I know I certainly have it. If I feel like things are doing well, I'm like, okay, I've done the right thing, I'm doing a good job, you know, top marks or whatever, approval. And, you know, and when I'm not, it's like, oh, I've done something wrong, I've made a mistake, I've messed up. And, you know, it's just not like that. And I think one thing that's really helped me is trying to hold money quite loosely. So it comes and goes. And I think, especially when I speak to kind of older, wiser people, I get this message a lot, like it comes into your life, it goes out of your life, and it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. I think Missy Elliott was the one that said more money, more problems. So, we don't always want loads of it. But it's yeah, just kind of having that lightness around it, that if it goes, it will come back. If it comes, it will go, and kind of letting it go and holding it loosely can be just great for your mental health and for your creativity, because that's another thing that's really important in our businesses. If we're always striving to make more, that can be a real block to our creativity, especially if it's fear-based. I think if it's love-based, like I can't wait to make these things and I know they're going to make loads of money, that can be great. But if it's I have to do this in order to make money, that kind of comes more from the fear space. So hopefully some of this is kind of making sense to you and starting to go in. It's like I said, it's a whole topic, a whole area. So to kind of tackle it all in one podcast episode is ambitious. But yeah, we had some really lovely discussions. So I kind of wanted to share it with the whole community here as well. So yeah, that spirit of forgiveness, like, oh, you made a mistake. Oh, you did something with money that didn't work out. And I often share one of my sort of more drastic stories in my business where I lost £50,000 overnight. And what it really taught me is like, yeah, this thing, it does come and go, and we do make mistakes. And I know when that happened to me, and I'll share how it happened for anyone who's not heard the back story before. But I did feel a lot of shame. I felt like I've done a really bad job here. I've made this big mistake, and I'm not good at running a business. I shouldn't have done any of this, and all those kind of negative thoughts come in. But actually, we all make mistakes, and some of them are big and some of them are small. We're allowed to make mistakes with our jewelry making. We're allowed to make mistakes with money too. We're allowed to buy the wrong thing and learn, oh, I didn't actually need that. We're allowed to invest in a course and then not do it. Like, we're allowed to, because these are all just human mistakes. Of course, we try not to do them, but if we do them, it's totally fine, because it is part of our journey. And, those are the things that are going to help us learn and develop our intuition so that hopefully we make better mistakes in the future. But yeah, just very briefly, so how I lost the £50,000 overnight. I didn't really have it in the first place, I suppose, but I didn't understand quite how that worked. I was quite young. I was only like 19 at the time, maybe a little bit older, 20. But that's no excuse. But that VAT is a tax that we have here in the UK, and it's 20% that you need to pay to the government. And you do it once your business reaches a certain threshold of around £80,000. And this is on revenue, so income into your business. So I knew about this and I thought I was on top of it. But what I didn't realize is that it was on revenue, which is income into your business, not profit. So I thought that VAT was on profit, which is very different. And profit is usually a lot lower than revenue, because profit is after all the costs have gone out of the business. So I called up, HMRC with the people that I needed to pay the money to and said, right, my business has reached this certain level of profit. And they said, no, you should have been paying this from a long time ago. You owe us £50,000. And if you don't pay it by tomorrow, we're going to shut you down. So that's where all the kind of like guilt, shame, fear, oh, I've made this huge mistake came up. And, I went to like bankruptcy lawyers and they were like, yes, you have to go bankrupt. It's going to be terrible. Like, everything's over. And, I could go into more detail, but I want to save time here today. But essentially, I kind of had a little word with myself and I was like, look, there must be another way. This was a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, and perhaps I can negotiate something. So I did speak to HMRC and I said, look, you can either kind of make my business go bankrupt, but who knows if you'll even get that money back, or you can give me a payment plan and I will pay it off over a number of months, and then I'll keep paying it because my business will keep going. And they said, yes, it's your first offense, yes, we'll do a payment plan with you. And we had to pay over 10 months, £5,000 a month, and I had no idea how we were going to pay it because we didn't have a spare £5,000 every month. But we worked together as a team. I spoke to everyone who was working for me at the time. We made some changes, and somehow that money was in the bank, and it just paid itself off. So that did teach me a lot of things. And then there's a few things like that have happened to me over the course of, the business that I've built. And but one of the things it taught is, that kind of, money comes, money goes, and you are always more important than money. First of all, always, you're more important than money, and you are more important than your business. But you can build a great business and you can make great money. So they are like bonuses, they're add-ons to your life. And I know that when I say this stuff, it can seem really simple, but there is a small part of us sometimes that doesn't know that or doesn't remember it, needs reminding. And I think with this money mindset stuff, it's a regular update. It's something that if we're going through a difficult time, we can come back to and think, okay, how am I feeling around money? Do I need to make some changes here? What can I do to build that relationship again and make it a really nice one for me and everyone around me? So there's a little story about forgiving yourself and making mistakes and not being afraid to take risks and things like that in your business as well. So the next point is that action brings about the change. So we want to start making small little steps in the right direction to take action around, kind of correcting, I suppose, our money mindset. If we've identified through this kind of more explorative work, okay, these are some areas I'd like to make some changes on. We don't need to change it all in one day. It doesn't need to be a big grand gesture, but just tiny little changes. And a challenge that I have for you guys that I'm going to set today, especially if you have some core beliefs around, I don't have enough money, money is tight, these kind of sort of anti like abundance beliefs, I suppose we could call them. If you struggle with that, you struggle with increasing your prices, you struggle with feeling like you have enough, then my challenge for you today, if you can do it today, or if not this week, is to spend money on something for yourself that you wouldn't usually allow yourself to do. So it doesn't need to be a big thing, but it's something that you wouldn't usually allow yourself to do. That is the key. So it might be that cup of coffee that you don't usually go out to get it, but it's just like a really nice treat and you're going to do it. And what this exercise does is it starts to combat those kind of ideas that money is something we need to be scared of, that we are not in control. We are in control, not the money. And also it's a change of behavior. And sometimes, and what I would say if you do this is notice what feelings come up for you. Do you feel guilty? Do you feel scared? What are the feelings that come up when or do you enjoy it? Can you embrace that kind of mini act of abundance and sort of be like, oh, I really, I've got some good energy from that. And that energy is going to help me in my life, in my business. And that's where that creative energy, that feeling good, creative kind of energy is where all the goodness comes from. That's where your customers are going to be attracted to you. That's where you're going to create amazing designs that people are going to want to buy. That's where you're going to feel confident charging enough so that you don't have to make all of the time, all the hours God sends, and then not have any profit at the end of the day. So it feels counterintuitive, especially if you don't have a lot of money, like just factually, it's not a lot in the bank. But sometimes doing these small acts, and it could be the cup of coffee, it could be that you wanted to donate to charity, but you just never let yourself do it because you're worried you don't have enough. So doing a small donation, or it could be just like a treat, but it needs to be, the key is it's something you wouldn't let yourself do. So we're starting to break down some of those invisible barriers that we've put up, usually based on fear. And likewise, I have a challenge for any overspenders out there. So if you feel like actually you're always spending money on things for yourself and you really struggle to feel contained around money, you really struggle to feel sort of settled around it, then my challenge for you this week is to see one thing that you can not spend money on, that you usually always spend money on. But the key around this challenge is you still need to enjoy the week just as much. So is there anything that you can cut out, but actually still have just as good and maybe an even better time? Like, is there something you're spending money on that is not bringing you joy, that you're doing it out of habit? And, you can go back to it next week if it's something you need to do. But, and that's just, again, it's about changing behavior, changing habits, and showing to yourself that actually you can have that restraint. And it doesn't have to feel bad, that you can feel good. It can feel even better to be contained. So we all have different challenges around money. So they're just a couple of tasks for you to try. If one of them feels really easy, do the other one. Because it should be a challenge, and it should kind of challenge your natural sort of beliefs around that. Great. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I think this was number 7, maybe we're calling it number 7, is it's important to a money mindset to understand the fundamentals of pricing. So it isn't all just internal work, although that's really important, deep work to do. But we do also want to take care of the logistical, mathematical elements of our money mindset. So a few fundamentals around pricing, and I do lots of workshops around pricing, so I'll put a link to those in the show notes as well, or you can go and check them out. If you type in Jewellery Academy pricing or pricing for profit, loads of stuff will come up, I'm sure. But so we need to understand the costs involved. So when we're pricing our jewelry or anything that we're selling, we need to make sure that we understand the costs and all of the costs, because one of the biggest mistakes I see jewelers make is that we forget about some extra things like hallmarking or packaging, or even like solder and saw blades. And of course, if it's pennies, then we can always charge a bit more to make sure we've covered for those bits and pieces. But making sure that we understand our costs as best as we can is a really important part of the pricing process. Then the next key part is our time, and making sure that we're charging well for our time. When we think about fair trade and these kind of organizations, it's all about giving people a good living wage. And I want to really encourage you around, are you giving yourself a good living wage? Is your business fair trade? Or are you treating yourself like, someone in a sweatshop who works many, many hours and doesn't get paid enough? Because that, to me, is not an ethical business. And, we wouldn't do it to someone else. So why are we allowing ourselves to do it to ourselves? I know at the very early stages, obviously, sometimes the money isn't there just yet, but we definitely don't want to get stuck in that habit of underpaying ourselves. And one good way to kind of check this is to ask yourself, if you were ill, let's say you were ill for a month, or you couldn't, I don't want to wish that on you. You couldn't work for a month. You're in Barbados. You're doing something. Could you pay someone else to do the same work for the money that you have? Because often what we do as small business owners is we just throw in some extras, or just do this, just do that, and think, well, I don't mind because it's my business. I don't mind. And that is a good approach to have when you're starting up. You're just kind of putting everything into it. But when we're looking at the long run of building a sustainable business, we want to charge for all the time that we're using. So if something takes you a day to make, charge for the day. Don't try and say, well, on my best day, I could do it in 3 to 4 hours. So if I'm feeling really good and energetic, then don't charge for that. Charge for the average of like what you would expect someone else to do if somebody else was kind of filling your role. So yeah, we've got our costs, we've got our time. We also want to make sure there's room for profit in our pricing. So our pricing shouldn't just cover our wages. So our wages are what we pay ourselves. So you will hopefully have chosen a wage that you pay yourself every month, or at least start to thinking about, what would I want to pay myself every month for the hours that I work? But on top of that is profit. It's separate. So profit is like extra money that you can use to grow the business, that you can use to invest in new tools and materials, that you can use for your training. This is money to invest. So the wage that you give yourself is like, you could be someone else, someone else could do that job and you'd pay them that amount to do it. The profit is the business's profit to grow the business. And you may choose to pay yourself a bit more from that profit if it's doing really well, or you may choose to put it into other things. So we want to put profit into our pricing as well. And generally speaking, this is a real generalization, but I find it helpful sometimes to have some numbers. Most healthy businesses will have around 20% net profit, which is the profit after all the expenses, pretty much, other than taxes. And many of them, and jewelry businesses especially, will have around 60% gross profit. So that is the profit just after all the costs involved in making that piece. So, for example, if you're making a ring, the silver in the ring, the gemstone in the ring, the solder in the ring, all of those things are kind of the costs to make that piece. Then there are additional costs like your overheads, so like the marketing that you do, even your tools can be overheads, because you'd use the same hammer to make one ring as you'd use to make 100 rings. So these don't go up every time you make a ring. These are the overheads, are kind of, sometimes they're called fixed costs. They're the costs that are there regardless of how many items you make and sell. So your gross profit, and this is getting a bit technical now, don't worry if it's going over your head, it's another whole topic really, but the gross profit, usually around 60% in a healthy business, is the income that you have minus like the silver, the gemstones, the consumables, and then you have the overheads, and after you minus the overheads, it's your net profit. So yeah, hopefully that didn't throw too many people off. Okay, a few final things. So an important part of developing our money mindset is learning how to do some practical things like increasing your prices. So if you have evaluated, like, I am charging too little, or I'd like to charge more, because you get to choose. It doesn't need to be based on anything other than your preferences. I'd like to charge more for this. And, just to say that most of you probably need to charge more. Notoriously, women undercharge for everything they do. And again, that is not a judgment or anything on you. It's generational. Women have only really worked in the last 100 years or so in many cases. So of course, we're going to be a bit behind with some of these tools and techniques and beliefs. So we are doing the work. We're here, we're doing the work to kind of come up to where we want to be, and we're passing that on to the next generation as well. So this work is not just for you, but it's kind of for everyone around you as well, which I always think is quite an inspiring thing to do. And then creatives also have that sort of idea behind, I enjoy doing what I'm doing, therefore I shouldn't charge so much for it, which obviously is just totally doesn't make any sense. Financially, it doesn't make sense. I understand it, but it's not the truth of how things need to be in order for us to grow and develop and keep doing what we're doing and be sustainable in it. So how to increase your prices, just a few little tips. Again, this could be another whole podcast episode, but I think one of the things which we do, which I definitely encourage people to do, is let people know when the prices are going up and use it kind of as a marketing tool. So if you know you're going to increase your prices, let's say in April, you could let people know a month or two before and say, I'm increasing my prices in April this year. You have a couple of months to get in before then. So any orders placed before this date are going to be at my current rate, and then they're going to go up. And that's great for your customers, because if they've been thinking about ordering something, that may just be the tipping point that makes them think, okay, great, I'm going to make sure I get my order in now. And it helps you to kind of plan if you're doing commissions and things like that to know what's coming. So let people know, give them time to get in at the current price and then go up. Now, usually you'll have a burst of people coming to you before the price increase, and then it will be quiet for a bit after the price increase. But then after a month or two, it all just kind of goes back to normal. So it kind of works itself out that way. If you feel anxious about it, feel free to go at your own pace. You might say, well, I'm here quite low and I want to go here, which is quite high. And, every step counts. So you don't have to be a perfectionist about this. If you feel like you've been really undercharging, then just maybe start baby steps, gradually increase. You can increase every year. You can increase every month if you want to. It's your business. You can do what you want. But I think one of the beliefs that we often have around money is that if we increase our prices, we'll have less customers. And that's not necessarily true. So especially with jewelry and any kind of like luxury products, it's not a necessity, although I do argue sometimes that it is, but it is not a necessity. It's not something that people need in order to survive. So it is a choice purchase, it is a luxury purchase. So if something costs, £100 or £150, it's not going to make a difference. And what's crucial is it's not going to make a difference to your ideal customer. There may be someone that it makes a difference to, but if you're moving in that direction, you don't want to take the wrong people with you. Because if you take the wrong people on holiday with you, you're not going to have a good trip. And it is the same if you take the wrong people on your business journey with you. If you've got bargain hunters, if you've got people who are looking to, negotiate, who are looking to spend less, if you keep catering to them, they will stay with you. We want to let those people go. And sometimes that's a process of letting go, and that's okay. But we do want to move towards the people who are looking to spend money on their jewelry. They're our customers. We want those people. There are lots of those people, more than, I think it's like, gosh, what was the figure? I don't want to get it wrong. I feel like it was like more than £8 billion was spent on jewelry, but it could be 8 million. And that's quite a big difference. Anyway, there's a lot of money spent on jewelry every year. And there's no reason why some of that can't go to you. You're not asking for 1 million or 1 billion. There's no reason. I think it must be 1 billion. I'm going to have to look that up. Anyway, we digress. So increasing your prices, let people know, use it as a marketing tool, go slowly, but do it, because it's only going to improve things. And sometimes there's a loss in the short run, but in the long run, you're building a sustainable business based around your values that you want. I've already talked about this one, but it's worth saying again. Always remember, you are worth more than money, and you are worth more than your business. And that is just that. So all of this is additional to you as an amazing person. And please, it's so easy to say, much harder to do, but please don't beat yourself up around money. It is just a thing, and it's a very important thing that we need in our lives. But there's an element of trusting that just taking the steps to follow your passion and do what you love, that it will come. And I think that belief and developing that belief within ourselves is really important as well. I just wanted to mention before we finish up about the economic crisis, because I get asked this a lot when I'm talking about money as well. Like, what about this year, because there's an economic crisis? And I don't want to belittle that in any way. But I also just want to let you know, I've been in business nearly 20 years, and every year there's been an economic crisis. And when I say this to people, they laugh. But honestly, from the first year I started, there was a crash. And then every year since then, people have said it's an economic crisis for different reasons, and I'm not saying the reasons aren't true, COVID, wars, cost of living, but the crisis doesn't end. So how real is that to our businesses, to the day-to-day running of our businesses? I mean, there are some realities, but my general feeling around it is that there will always be people telling you there's some sort of crisis, and you got to kind of just do what you want to do anyway, because if you're waiting for that to end, well, I wouldn't have created anything by this point. So I think, some of the things that I do around that, some practical things, is I'm really careful about the news that I consume. I don't really listen to the news, but if I need to know something, I will make sure I'm proactive in looking at the thing that I want to look at, rather than scrolling through newspapers or looking at kind of clickbait and coming back to very fear-based headlines that their goal is to sell papers, is to get clicks, and not to give a really well-informed bit of information about what's going on in the world. So, just be careful what you consume, because what you're consuming is what's going to create these current beliefs. And that's a little bit what the affirmations are about. They're about consuming something really good. It's like a healthy meal. It's like saying, oh, this is a great thing for me. So be careful about what you consume, and also what kind of conversations you have. If you start to notice you're around people and they're really talking around a lot of fear-based stuff, become aware of it, become aware of what it's doing inside of you around how you're feeling about it. And you don't need to have those conversations. You can change the subject. You can talk about jewelry, or something else, because it doesn't, in my experience, it doesn't help. And in fact, it can be quite damaging to kind of feed those fears and those anxieties, which we want to hold them, we want to look after them, but we don't really want to create more of them because they're not helpful for the growth of our businesses. Another thing that I think is so important, and I've learned this over the years, is to never try and convince someone to buy your work. Never try and tell people why it's worth that much. I mean, it can be good to talk about the materials and the things involved so they have an understanding. But if it's coming from this energy, and I think it's all about energy when it comes to money, or about most things really, but especially when it comes to money, if somebody says, it's priced too much, to me, it's just they've opted out, and that's fine. And I don't need to be angry at them. I don't need to have any negative sort of feelings towards them, but it's not for them. It wasn't created for them. It's not for them. It never needs to be. And we talked about this a bit in the workshop, this idea of, what if someone starts negotiating with you? And for me, like, there's no negotiation. If someone says what my best price is, that's my best price, the price that I have put. And it can be there, or I can double it. And when you start saying things like that and almost making a joke out of it, it kind of becomes this thing, where people do walk away if they are searching for that kind of what deal can I get? No, thank you. That's not the energy that we're building these businesses with. And like I said, be careful who you do deals with, because they're going to come back. And they probably won't have changed, and you're going to have to go through that again. And I think the cost that it has to ourselves, to our self-esteem, to how we feel about ourselves, when we've spent time and energy learning these incredible crafts, creating these incredible things, and then someone devalues it, and we agree, we say, yes, I'm happy to lower my prices for you. We are devaluing ourselves in that moment. And it does have a cost to us, to how we feel about ourselves and to how we feel about our business. And it's usually a lot greater than the money that we got from that sale. So there's something about really having that integrity, and it can be scary. Don't get me wrong. It can be scary to turn down a sale. And we want to help people. A lot of us want to accommodate and be supportive, but yes, letting go of pleasing everyone, letting go of everyone being your customer, and really focusing on you and growing yourself and your values are going to attract the right people to you. So we don't need to convince anyone of anything. How freeing and amazing is that? Final little points are, I think something that really helps once you've done some of this work as well is then just refocusing around creativity and innovation and moving forwards. And, whatever happens in the world, if you're always innovating, if you're always creating, if people copy you, whatever, if you're always moving forwards, then you've always got this energy that you're bringing, and that's where people buy from. And it's also a lovely place to run a business from, and a lovely place to live from. So we can't be there all the time. Sometimes we're tired and we need a break, and sometimes we're just not in a good headspace, and that's okay as well. But that awareness of where we are and what it's going to bring is really helpful, I find. So how to feel good about money in your business? Let it go, as the Frozen song tells us to, kind of hold it lightly, look at it, but don't stare at it. And just kind of move forwards and trust that, you're doing the right things. You do know what you're doing. If you don't, you're learning. Come join us in the Business Academy. We'll help you out. So learn the things, develop yourself, and then trust yourself that you have entirely got this. Enjoy what you do, move towards the things that you really want to do and you really enjoy, because people will be drawn to that. And also you'll be happy. And then use your money as a force for good. And I think, sometimes if we know that if we have money, we're going to do good things with it, that can help as well, because we're not scared of getting money. It sounds like a weird thing, but sometimes we are scared. Like, what would I do with all of that? How would I manage? What would how would other people perceive me? But it's okay. It's safe to make money. So yeah, I guess my final thought for today is just to kind of focus on doing what you love, and building the business that you want, and trust that the money will come. And if it doesn't, at least you did what you loved anyway. So I hope that this episode has been helpful and thought-provoking, and hopefully you have some takeaways and some things that you can action. Yeah, come and let me know. I'd love you to drop me a message on Instagram at Jewellery Academy. I'm there pretty much every day, and just let me know how you found the episode, if you're going to put any things into action, or if there's anything that resonated with you. And feel free to share in the Jewellery Academy Facebook group around this topic as well. We'll definitely have some kindred spirits, I'm sure, whatever it is that you're going through with your relationship with money at the moment. And finally, make sure you check out the Jewellery Business Academy. These are the kind of things that we talk about. We talk about building businesses, lots of practical things, or lots of things that are going to help us all to grow and develop together. So I'm excited to see some of you there. Oh, and finally, almost forgot, we have a webinar this week, a free webinar, kind of masterclass with myself, called How to Grow Your Jewelry Business in 2024. And we're going to be focusing on strategies for jewelry business growth, lots of practical tips, and I'll also be talking a bit more about the the Jewellery Business Academy, and how you can kind of use that to grow your business too. So come along and join me for that. Again, link in the show notes. Lots of link in the show notes today, but lots of good stuff. So have a wonderful week, jewelers. I will speak to you very soon, and take care and enjoy this work around your money mindset. It is really, really rewarding, I find. So, all right, see you soon. Bye for now.